Hi, everybody. This is Saad. Today I've got another fantastic guest, Emily Austin. How are you? I'll introduce you in a second, but how are you doing?
Good. I'm in Tel Aviv. Life can't be better.
What? So you're in the place where you're walking over the dead bodies of all those that were genocided?
That's what my comments say. Yeah,
That's terrible.
apparently.
What a disgusting Zionist you are. Uh, but easy on the eyes, if I may say. I usually refer to myself as when people say, "Oh, you're a great professor," so on. I always reply, why did you not put that I'm also easy on the eyes? So you're a Zionist, but you're easy on the eyes. So maybe that serves as a redeeming quality. Could that be?
I really hope so. My favorite DMs, I have to tell you, and I get them like even 5 minutes ago. They write, "You might be pretty on the outside, but you're ugly on the inside." And I'm like, at least you're giving credit where it's due.
There you go.
You
There you
know?
go. We can't have it all. Okay, so you're from you studied at Hofstra. What was it in sports broadcasting? I know that that's your main profession, but was it in that field that you studied?
So I started at Hofstra. I did pre-med, which is random and a longer story, and then I switched to the comm school, but they actually made my life a living hell. So I transferred to Touro University, which I graduated from there, and now I might go to law school there. So we shall
Oh,
see.
I see. Okay, well, your Jewish parents must be deeply disappointed that they can't brag to the world that we have a Jewish doctor in the family. But my personal link to Hofstra in 2009, when our daughter, our firstborn, was very young, her first trip ever, she must have been maybe 3 months old, was I was giving a talk at Hofstra for the 150th anniversary of the release of Charles Darwin's on the Origin of Species, which in 2009 was 150 years. And as you may or may not know, my scientific area of research is to apply evolutionary psychology to study human behavior. So I do have a link to Hofstra. You then went on and became a sports broadcaster, which you still are doing. Also segued into political commentary. Just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, you started your new show, the Emily Austin Show. You had Andrew Cuomo as your first guest. I might say that I could have been offended because many of the top shows today, I've been their inaugural guest. Dave Rubin, I was
Really?
the inaugural guest. Tyrus, Planet Tyrus, I'm the inaugural guest. I could give you a whole list. And yet, Emily Austin had the chutzpah and gall to not ask me first, but chose Andrew Cuomo. Tell us
We'll
how
make a
that
deal. We'll make a deal. Season 2, episode 1. You will be the debut episode.
went. Sounds good. Tell us how that went. Tell us about the show, and then we can take it from there.
Well, the launch was phenomenal. I interviewed Cuomo. Needless to say, I kept it very light. Everybody knows where I stand. I hate Mamdani. Cuomo's the better candidate. Doesn't mean he's perfect. No, but am I going to do everything I can to make him look great? Yes. So that's what I did. Now, what wasn't scripted, and I just kind of, I never, stick to the script on my podcast. My first episode, I already have like a set standard. Anyway, I went off script and I was like, you know what? I'm starting Hot Girls for Cuomo because for whatever reason, Hot Girls for Mamdani came to my head. And I just like off the cuff was like, all right, Hot Girls for Cuomo, here we go. I never thought that that video would have now 18 million views on
Wow.
X. And it's just going up and up and up. And I'm like, when is this going to end? Which is great for the podcast. But obviously, you know how the liberals are having absolute meltdowns. And not just liberals, because Cuomo is a Democrat. I noticed everyone having a meltdown over this has a free Palestine in their bio, Palestine flag, or they're like a queer Jew. Anything that has to do with labeling themselves to not fit in, that's something that they all have in common. So it was great. They took it out of context and tried to make it something negative. They tried to pretend I'm not hot. I mean, come on. Like,
Come on.
you can't do that. And then you became part of Hot Girls for Cuomo, so it all came
Not
together.
me. Fierce Sally. That's just
Oh,
she's a distant cousin of mine. That's not me.
excuse, she looks like you. My
She
bad.
does look a bit like me, yes. For those of you who don't know, go to Emily's hot girl thing. I sent a picture of my alter ego, Fierce Sally. So can we say what percentage of the 18 million views were due to Fierce Sally?
A significant amount. I'd say most of them.
So was there anything in the conversation that you had with Andrew Cuomo that surprised you, either in the positive sense or in the negative sense, or is it all sort of the typical sort of boilerplate stuff that you might expect a politician to offer you?
I mean, at this point, Personally speaking, I already do my homework on people, so there's not much that can surprise me in an interview. What surprises me about this election in general is that I ask Cuomo, can you clarify, free busing, grocery control, rent freezing? Can you actually explain what this means to the average New Yorker? Because Mamdani is making it sound like it's rainbows and unicorns. But Cuomo stated so simply, learn it young, folks. Nothing in life is free. And it's really that simple sometimes. And I can't understand why that message is not penetrating. Because everyone's thinking Mamdani will make everything free. No, the buses will turn into homeless shelters. He's not going to freeze your rent, or he will for 20% of New Yorkers, and the other 80% will have to pay double for their, rent-free apartment. And it's just like, why can't people just hear the other side out? You don't have to like Cuomo, but do you really just believe everything Mamdani says? So when I interviewed him, I really tried to get that messaging across. Like, he is lying to you. And then he told me he's a Knicks fan, so no matter what he believes in, we have to like each other now.
Well, do you know who Ariel Helwani is?
Of course, he's a boxing reporter, my fellow Jew.
Do you know at all of my relationship with him?
No,
No. And you say you do
no.
your homework before you
You're
speak.
interviewing me, God.
I know, but still, he's my maternal nephew. Now,
Really?
yes, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because since as far back as I remember him being a young child, he was a fan of the New York Knicks
Yes.
in the Patrick Ewing era. And he has a very unique, I don't know if it's sort of love for the underdog, but he's always, and I'm here to confirm, he's always loved the New York Knicks. He's always loved the Buffalo Bills. At the time when they had lost, four Super Bowls in a row in the early 90s, he was a diehard Buffalo fan. So now he's a bit happier because they're quite an attractive team to watch.
Right.
And I don't know why, but he's decided to jump on the Nottingham Forest bandwagon. So this is a team that plays in the Premier
Okay.
League in England, but that had been out of the top league for maybe 30 years, and that's his team. So maybe one day you'll explain to me his choices, but he supports just like you do the New York Knicks.
That's so funny. I know Ariel. I don't remember which fight we had worked on initially, but I remember being so relieved that there was another Jew working with me. And I remember it was my first day, and he was so nice, and we were like stuck outside the parking lot for hours. And honestly, like on a serious note, sometimes being politically opinionated in sports, first of all, it sucks. Like if nobody had an opinion, I'd keep mine to myself. But when everyone feels that they can share theirs and we're supposed to stay silent, I don't accept that. And to see that Ariel is also very public about where he stands and how he's unapologetic about that, it makes it easier for myself to feel more confident doing it. So
So
he's great.
you must be I don't know if you know her or maybe you've had a chat with her. I've had her on the show a while ago. Sage Steele would be someone that you would certainly appreciate because she sort of broke the mold of having some quote conservative positions at ESPN. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I call it the Biden regime because being a university student under Biden, especially at Hofstra, felt like living under a dictatorship of some sort. But being pro-Trump when he was the president had to be the most, forget isolating, because I could deal with the feeling of being isolated, but I felt like I was being punished on a daily basis, whether it was remarks from my professors or being penalized for not conforming to their right why Leah Thomas is Women of the Month. No, thank you. She's not even a woman. I'm not going to do that. Or write me why Trump is a dictator and a fascist, or write why Trump is similar to Hitler in 6 paragraphs or less. I didn't comply with any of that, and I faced consequences for that. And that was just how it was under Biden. There was nobody to complain to. There was nobody to report to. That was the standard. And then what like broke the camel's back at Hofstra was the forced vaccinations. And I get that it was a state law. They're a private university, so I feel like they had some more leeway with that. And the forced vaccinations, it's like they preach to us in class, my body, my choice, but it's not my body and my choice when it came to vaccines, but they can hand out Plan Bs all over campus and talk about your body being your choice. I couldn't deal with the hypocrisy. And at some point, I stopped. I lost all my jobs defending President Trump. I literally got thrown out of Hofstra and then had to contemplate getting vaccinated to get back. It was an absolute nightmare. So I so feel for Sage what she went through. It was literally taboo to be MAGA And then when Trump won, God, everybody hopped on the bandwagon. I know people that are kissing his ass in the Oval Office that if I show their DMs to Trump, he will never speak to them again. How I was being attacked online for supporting him, and now they're all shaking hands with him. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Do your parents or family members ever come to you as you were facing the consequences of some of your, open positions and say, "Hey, Emily, can you just be pragmatic and shut that mouth of yours?" Or are they all on board? Go, honey badger, do your thing.
Well, their biggest regret, first and foremost, was me not pursuing pre-med. That was the first heartbreak my parents experienced when it came to me. Many more to follow, but that was the first. Um, I saw a funny quote where it was like, this Jewish mom's daughter became the first woman president ever. And when she gave her speech at inauguration, she goes, and my other daughter's a doctor.
I was
It's
just
just
going to say the exact same joke to you.
right. We have telepathy tonight. So my mom's sister's a doctor, my mom's a lawyer, my dad's a banker, my brother studied architecture, and then Emily wants to go into journalism. They're like, that's not a thing. What are you talking about? You have no connections in the media, you're not in entertainment, stick to the medicine. So me already leaving that broke their heart. And then you know, being out there publicly, as you know, it has its pros. You get to connect with incredible people. You have influence in certain areas when you feel like it, but it also comes with being doxxed and personal attacks and attacks on your family. And that's where the line is crossed and nobody respects that line. So when it came to post October 7th, I debated a woman on Piers Morgan. She thought it was a good idea to dox me essentially and target me publicly. That was when my family is like, is this worth it? Is what you're doing, both financially and mentally, worth the suffering? And my answer was yes, because A, it's very financially worth it. And B, it's also not even about that. It's more so, this was my dream my whole life. I'm already this close. This was then. And why should I stop now? Because someone's trying to make my life hard. So you just want to cater to them and cower and say, okay, you win because you made my life a bit difficult. I refuse to let my enemies win. And as a parent, I can see why they don't want that path for me. And I personally, like, I don't have kids, but I'd imagine I'd want them to like study medicine or something and stay out of the media, but I can handle it. I'm tougher than the rest of my siblings. I have very thick skin. And I think today, my dad's my biggest fan. My mom is my biggest hater and my biggest fan at the same time. She's like super critical of everything I do, but I really think that deep down, they're very, very proud.
Had you always been someone who spoke your mind, went against the current, didn't care about, abiding to the herd mentality, or is this something that you discovered in you as you faced some of the realities of the past few years?
Yeah, I really think, and maybe you could speak on this because you're actually the science guy here. I genuinely believe people are born with certain personalities. From birth, I remember my parents telling me when I was a kid, like, Emily, you have to stop talking in class. Your teachers say you talk too much. They say that you overshare. And this is from like pre-K, I remember being told this. Now, growing up, parent-teacher conferences were always a nightmare for me because they would always say, she's not like the rest of the class. She doesn't follow the rules. She's not a great listener. And I had an older brother, one class above. He's a straight boy, straight A's, just not a sheep, God forbid, but like kind of a sheep. So he's, special in his own way. And all the teachers would always say, Joey's phenomenal. He's great. And Emily, well, she's not Joey. Like he was the star child. I was always making noise in the house. I keep things interesting. That's how I frame it. So being that personality doesn't really have a direction, right? If there's no purpose, you're just a rebel without a cause. And I never had any passions really other than sports, like nothing of significance. My whole life was I played tennis growing up. That's all I knew. I studied pre-med and then politics. It just happened. It wasn't something I was caring for. In fact, I was so apolitical, I couldn't stand the thought of watching Fox News growing up. And then when I got to college, it's like I got thrown into the real world and I started hearing other perspectives. Honestly, I'd never met liberals until I got to college. I grew up in a tiny bubble in Long Island full of mostly conservatives, and if they weren't, they were moderate, mostly Jews, and if they weren't, everyone's friends and allies. And then in college, I get called a kike. And I'm like, well, this is new. Suddenly, my purposeless life of let's do sports journalism found my purpose, which is, whoa, Jews are not liked. And that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, but how can I help it? And then October 7th happened. And it went from, okay, I'm not only a Jew now, I need to remind everyone what Zionism is and why it's justified, even though we'll get into it. I don't justify it anymore. I stopped explaining myself. It doesn't matter. Nobody gets it anyway. But back in college is when I realized being a Jew was way more important to me than I ever knew growing up. Being a Zionist was a huge priority to me. And then, most importantly, was defending American values that I saw liberals were trying to defer from. Those became my values in college that I had never thought of prior.
Were you taken aback by the amount? I mean, I'm older than you, obviously, and I have my own history in growing up in the Middle East. So my exposure to Jew hatred is very different from yours. But even in my case, when I saw the very open, orgiastic Jew hatred post October 7th, it took me by surprise. And there are few things that can surprise me at this point in my life. So in your case, yes, okay, you heard kike maybe on college campuses, but were you surprised by the amount of Jew hate? Because I'm sure you received tons of Jew hatred today.
Yeah. Um, I'll be very vulnerable right now. After October 7th, I mean, pre-October 7th, I was at the peak of my career, peak, relationships, friendships, confidence in myself. And then after October 7th, we all got into defense mode. Like we all got super defensive. And then part of being defensive is also attacking back. So I became literally, God, a warrior after October 7th. And it's great for the cause, right? But for Emily Austin, it was very bad because what people knew of me was debates, arguing for Israel on the news, always being combative. And let's be honest, I'm a young woman looking to get married one day and have children. And now the narrative that's around me is she's this fierce warrior. And it's funny because I'm not even that person. I am the most relaxed, hard to annoy, hard to piss off. But the perception of me throughout this time is that I'm like this debater and love to fight with people and constantly being attacked, so always needing to defend myself. And it mentally put me in such a bad place. Not only was the war going on, it consumed my life. And I don't know how it didn't consume every Jew's life, but that's another issue I have entirely. But it kind of put my personal life at a stop, a complete halt. My personal life breaks, relationships breaks, friendships breaks. Even my sports career took hits. I mean, Miss Universe dropped me entirely. I got blackballed for convincing them, trying to convince them to make a statement, hey, rape is wrong. So I was miserable. I was just this angry, walking ball of rage, snappy, pissy, and that's not who I am. So this all was very frustrating to deal with.
Yeah, what you're saying resonates with me in the following sense. If someone meets me in person, but even if you really watch the entirety of my social media, I'm someone who's very, I'm jocular, I have fun, I'm very warm, I'm affectionate, but people only remember the spicy parts, the sarcasm, the punchiness, the combativeness. And so that I'll often get people who meet me in person and say, "Oh, can I tell you something?" Yes. I'm very surprised how much warmer you seem to be. I was very intimidated to come up to talk to you. I said, "Why?" Well, because you have this persona on social media. Well, it's not a persona. It's that if you put someone in an MMA arena, they're going to fight. That doesn't mean that I also can't have the love and nurturance to tuck my children to bed. Both of
Mhm.
these facets are part of the human repertoire of behaviors. And so I understand your sense of people view me as one way, whereas in reality I'm someone different. Uh, are
Oh
the
wait, but I
rest?
didn't answer your question.
Go
So
ahead.
that was prefacing, was I surprised by the
Oh,
anti-Semitism?
right.
And my answer was because I got into attack mode as it came. I can't say I was expecting it because I wasn't expecting it, but I was ready for it. Now that I've had a week. The hostages are home. I feel like I could like take a break. Now that I've had time to process the last 2 years, I'm looking back and I'm realizing, like, I'm stating the obvious here. We, as in Israel, we were attacked. Yet we became the perpetrators of a genocide, even though Hamas tried to genocide Israel on October 7th. And we became the bad guys, even though we're fighting terrorists. And I became the face of genocide. And I'm just thinking about how all of this doesn't make sense. And it's like, while everyone's had time to relax post-war, I'm just starting now to process how upside down the world is. I had never in a million years expected after October 7th so many people to be happy about Jews dying. I hate this narrative of Jews online, and we're probably thinking of the same people right now that are like, oh my God, this is what happened on October 7th, and everyone feel bad for us. And look, this whole family was massacred, and this whole family died, and they killed dogs, and they don't care. In fact, they think they're informing them. No, no, no. Let's be very clear. Everybody's aware of what happened. They're happy it happened. So let's stop trying to paint ourselves as these victims because no one perceives us as victims anyway. And stop defending ourselves and just exist without justifying it to anyone. Because that anti-Semitic response post October 7th put a switch in my brain, convincing me we're not winning this fight. And I'm not trying to because it's not a fight. You don't like me? That's too bad. You don't get to kill us. We don't get to kill you. That's what living in America is. But you live in the Islamic Jihad of Canada, so I don't know.
I do, I do. Well, I'm going back and forth. I'm actually a scholar at Ole Miss, which, by the way, and it's not as though Ole Miss asked me to say this, but for any Jews that don't wish to be going to the Ivy Leagues, and I'm an Ivy Leaguer, I did my MS and PhD at Cornell, but I understand how woke and sort of pro-Islam many of these universities have become. Look to the south and look to Old Miss. One of the things that I'm hoping to do is build a cabal of Jewish life at Old Miss. And so, hey, maybe you'll come down and visit us there.
I love
Gorgeous place. Men still know that they're men. Women still know that they're
it.
women. It's funny because last year when I was being courted by several universities trying to rescue me from, as you said, uh, Canadistan. Uh, I went to visit Ole Miss, and it would have been a priori, it would have been last on my list. After I came back from the visit in February, I, my wife picked me up at the airport, and she goes, "So how was it?" I said, "I think we might be moving to Ole Miss," and she's like, "Really?" Because I was receiving offers that were actually, more competitive, certainly from a salary perspective, but yet
Mhm.
it just felt right. It's as if time stood still. We were back in the 1950s, but in the good sense of the 1950s. Men are men, women are women. People celebrate, American freedoms and American values. So I really say this, and nobody asked me to say this. If you're looking for these sort of free, liberal in the true sense of the term, schools, the South is where it's happening. Have you heard similar things from other people?
My experiences, a lot of people come to me when they're having nightmares on their campuses. So unfortunately, I don't get to hear the good parts of it. A lot of people hear my Hofstra story and then they'll approach me with their own version of their Hofstra
Right.
story. So it's really nice to hear that because, like, again, I don't have kids. I'd love to have many kids one day, and I really, really fear for their upbringing in America. Like I live in New York. I'm thinking like, what school will I send them to? Will it be a Jewish school? Because you know what? The truth is, I don't want them growing up in a Jewish bubble because
Yeah.
that will come from me in the home. I want them to be in a public school. But schools aren't what they used to be, and college campuses are even worse. And I'm not going to be the mom homeschooling her kids or not sending her kids away to school. But then again, what are the options? So hearing that there are options makes me want to have kids a little bit more.
I love that you said that you don't want them to grow up in a Jewish bubble. I'll share with you a story. I can't remember if I've ever said it. I think I might have said it once or twice publicly, but here it goes. So we can assume that it's almost an exclusive. So many years ago, I was sitting down with my dad, and he sort of looked at me pensively and he goes, "You know what, God? I really regret that I didn't send you to Jewish school." And I looked at him in my sort of inimitable style and I said, "Well, that's funny that you would say that, Dad, because that which you regret is exactly what I have to thank you for. And that sort of took him aback because, exactly to your point, the fact that I didn't go to Jewish school didn't in any way erase any of my staunch commitment to my Jewish heritage. But what it did is that it opened me up to being able to speak to people that are not named Mordechai and Moshe. And that
Exactly.
and that really helped. So I really admire you. You are going to make one hell of a mom one day. And lucky is the husband who is able to pin you down. I mean, pin you down in a marriage sense. Would you ever marry a non-Jewish guy, if I may ask a personal question?
I hate this question publicly, but it's time to address it. I've never addressed it publicly. Okay, back in college, the easiest way to dismiss anyone asking me out was, okay, you're not Jewish, you're not Jewish. Now, what that ended up doing was actually making a lot of people anti-Semitic because it came off really arrogant and dismissive, as if because I'm a Jew, you're not worthy of being my partner. And it did actually make people anti-Semitic, and I had to work very hard to undo the damage that I did. The truth is, the reason I rejected them is because I didn't like them. But a big part of it to me, for the person I choose for my future, is that we need the same values and we need the same culture. And I'm not just a normal Jewish girl where it's like, yeah, I'm Jewish and then I do whatever I want. And not judging you guys, at least you're proudly Jewish, but like I keep kosher. I don't work on Shabbat. We do Kiddush every Friday night. I have crazy family values. I'm not just Jewish, I'm Iraqi Sephardic. So like really strong family values. And I speak Hebrew and I want my kids to speak Hebrew and I want them to go to Israel every summer. And if my husband doesn't understand that, if my husband doesn't want to go to Israel or has no interest in learning how to do Kiddush, it won't work. And the reality is, most non-Jews, why would they not want to have a cheeseburger or have Shake Shack and just live an easier life? And I wouldn't want that burden upon them. So in short, marriages have problems when you're aligned. Now imagine you're misaligned and you get married and then you try to make it work and then you have kids and your life is crumbling. I don't need that. Like I'm going to try to avoid all that. So I'm going to try to get as close as I can to culturally similar, religiously similar, and the rest of the problems will be a little bit easier to tackle.
Well, you're speaking in a way that's well wiser than your age, because actually there is a lot of scientific evidence that supports what you're saying. And I actually talk about it in my previous book, in the happiness book. In one of the early chapters in the book, I talk about, you know, arguably the most important decision that you'll make in your life that either imparts great happiness to you or the opposite, great unhappiness, is the choice of mate that you make. And the research is unequivocal that when it comes to the likelihood of long-term success, so I'll say the fancy scientific term, but then I'll explain it easily. It's called assortative mating, or more colloquially, birds of a feather flock together. So your point about being with someone who shares your values is by far the biggest predictor. So if I happen to be, a staunch atheist and my prospective wife organizes her entire life around her religion, to your point, yes, it's nice to think that love conquers all, but you really are starting on the wrong statistical ground, right? Because statistically speaking, as you said, so many things can go wrong in a marriage. And so to increase that, marrying someone that shares your values is spot on. Now, I didn't know that you were Iraqi. Do you speak any Arabic?
بحكي شوي لبناني, but not
بحكي.
Iraqi.
واو 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 واو، مش معقول بتحكي عربي لبناني.
Your
ليش؟
your accent's so much cooler than mine.
Well, I'm just overall very cool. How come you speak Lebanese accent? Where did you get that from?
So when I started working in Saudi, people would speak about me in front of me, and it made me really uncomfortable. And I'm a nosy, curious girl. I wanted to know what everyone was saying about me. So I started learning the Saudi dialect, which was hard. It's a lot of like and like throating that I couldn't do, even having all the Hebrew experience. That was even a lot for me. And by the way, Iraqi Arabic is similar. So, by the way, there's a lot of Lebanese in Saudi for work. Speaking to a lot of Lebanese Arabs, they were telling me that Lebanese is the prettiest dialect and the easier dialect. It's like second easiest to Egyptian. So I started studying that one, even though the Saudi slang is funnier. My favorite thing I've learned thus far, I don't know if you know it. You know Batsebdi is?
قولي كمان مرة.
Batsebdi.
بعد سبدي بعد.
It's a Riyadh slang. It's not even
No,
Saudi.
I
It's
don't know what that means.
yeah. So Ba'asibdi is like instead of saying like I love you, or it's like a crazy exaggeration of I love you more than I value my liver, which is so funny to me. And now that's like literally what I tell my friends. I'm like Ba'asibdi, and they're like, what? And I'm like, I love you more than my liver. And it's like
Wow.
Lebanese has a lot of those slangs too. So like ya ayuni, ya albi, ya ruhi, like all that fun stuff.
Oh,
But
it's funny that you said this because I just did a satirical piece where I pretend I am the typical, Muslim prospective immigrant, who first begs and I just want to come to your country and I love you. And I started off with Ya Ayuni, Ya
ya
Elbi, Ya
ayuni,
Rohi, which basically means my heart, my eyes,
my
and
eyes.
my soul and my life and so on. So yeah, that's beautiful. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, I've actually recently had several very warm interactions with people from Al Arabiya.
Oh, nice.
Specifically, yeah, I appeared on. Do you know who Riz Khan is?
Probably by face. I'm not good with
So
names.
Riz Khan used to be the, I think, the top anchor of CNN Global and BBC Global, whatever. This sort of very distinguished, gentleman, and now he switched to Al Arabiya, and so he flew. He came from, I think he was from Dubai, though he came to
Hmm.
do a show in person in Montreal. And I was actually, concerned. I said, "Is there anything you don't want to discuss?" And he said, "No, just have at it." And so we had a very frank conversation. I mean, very measured, very proper, very professorial, but there was nothing held back. And apparently, he then told me that, people in Saudi Arabia loved our conversation, so much so that I then appeared on several other Al Arabiya shows. And now we're in discussion about other projects. So my
Nice.
experience has been wonderful. How has, the outspoken, lovely, non-hijab Jewish girl in Saudi Arabia, how's it been going for you?
Wow. I've been now over 10 times at least. The first time I went to Saudi, I actually flew from Tel Aviv, so I was very scared. Layover in Dubai, then flew to Riyadh.
By
Um,
yourself?
yes, so both my parents were born in Israel, raised in America. So their passports are Israeli and American, but it says born in Israel. So they were afraid to come. Um, I went by myself, and I didn't really leave my room otherwise, other than like having to go to work or getting a drink from the lobby. I literally remember the first two trips to Saudi, I didn't leave my hotel. Now, granted, they gave me like a four-bedroom suite, so why would I leave my hotel? But I was afraid to like even show my face. Most women there are niqab, fully covered, but there is no law that you have to be. So I don't dress in niqab. I go like this. I would even go in like a t-shirt. Like nobody really cares. Um, Everyone there knows who I am. That in short, they know who I am. They know I'm a Zionist. They know I'm a Jew. And my response has not only been pleasant, it's been above and beyond. And I hate when people are like, oh, well, they're paying you to say that. No, they don't. I don't work for the Saudis. I work for the Zone based in the UK. And the fights that I cover are in Saudi. And here's a story that I like to share because I think it shows a nice sense of like potential unity. My Yom Kippur last year was spent in Saudi. Now, I couldn't work that day, so I took off. I couldn't use the elevator. I couldn't eat. I was basically just in my room all day, like reflecting on my past year. And three of my Saudi friends that work for the sports company asked me, why aren't you coming to work today? And I explained to them what Yom Kippur is. And if you saw the feast that was awaiting right after Yom Kippur had ended, and water and snacks and gummy bears, and they made me this Egyptian dessert, and it was so incredible to see that. Now, they don't know what kosher is, like they don't know the difference between kosher and halal. They made me like a big camel. I had to tell them I couldn't eat it because it's not kosher, but it was a thought that counts. And the point being, they had no idea what Yom Kippur was. It's not their religion, it's not their problem, and they went so out of their way to make sure that I spent it as comfortably as possible, and that's something I'll never forget.
Well, that's I'm so glad that you mentioned that story because one of the things that I say when people ask me, what is your sort of future prognosis of the Middle East? I say, if we can unleash, never mind the cultural, historical, archaeological, potential of, but just the human potential, right? Because there are cultural elements to the Middle East. I don't care what your religion is, hospitality, to your point that are, I mean, yes, you could argue there are many cultures that are hospitable, but there is really something that is unique about the Middle East. I mean, I come from there. If you come to our house for dinner, it is a great insult if we don't, I mean, drown you in so much food that,
Yeah.
you're going to have to go on Weight Watchers for the next 6 weeks, really to make up for that one dinner you had. It's kind of the opposite mindset from the Western mindset where,
Correct.
there are 10 people coming for dinner, so there are 10 pieces of chicken. No, we have 680 dishes, right? And that is not specific to Lebanese Jews, it's specific to the Middle East. So if we
Right.
can get rid of all of the, doctrinal hate that comes with, religious dogma and so on, the potential in that region is like no other. And so that's great. Are there other incredible stories, uplifting stories that you could share from the Middle East that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, the respect goes both ways. So we really try, for multiple reasons, to avoid having these debates in Saudi about Israel or Islam or Judaism. But I have one friend who we always go to this really authentic Saudi spot, and everyone's in niqab, and I'm there. Don't get me wrong, I don't dress around I never dress immodest to begin with, our version of immodest. So I try to respect them as well. I don't cover my hair because that's not something I would ever do right now. Um, but one time we got into the Judaism Islam conversation, and it wasn't a hostile conversation. It was more like, let's point out the similarities and the differences. And obviously, Muhammad came up, and while they're very well aware that we have no recognition of him whatsoever, like it didn't really matter. It was just like, I'm going to teach you, and then vice versa. I was teaching him. One conversation we had was I was talking about Abraham sacrificing Isaac. And then they're like, no, he sacrificed Ishmael. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it was Isaac. And then we had to like Google it. And then his version of Google said Ishmael and mine said Isaac. And I'm like, do we kill each other now? No. Like it was so nice because it's crazy. God, I can agree to disagree with people in Saudi, but not in the United States.
Right.
And it's like, how far have we lost our freedom of free thinking in the United States? But I can have that so respectfully in Saudi, in a country that people criticize for a dictatorship. That's the country I have the most thought-provoking conversations. It's like, you can't make it up.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, have you seen, I'm sure you've probably seen those. I can't remember the names of these particular individuals, but there are several sort of viral clips of men from the Gulf region where they're saying, are you going to teach? I mean, we're Muslim and we think the Muslim Brotherhood is so dangerous and so on, and yet you imbeciles in the West are completely hoodwinked. So it really is amazing that because those folks understand the dynamics of some of those, radical ideologies, they're able to put a doorstop to it, whereas in the West, we're so kind and tolerant and empathetic.
It's so true. I mean, this is something that only like people who are well traveled, and my biggest advice to people is travel far and wide. Try not to get taken hostage, but travel very far and wide because you learn so much and it actually shifts your perspective in a way that you'll never get from, definitely not from these little iPhones. The problem is not, and I'll be honest, and a lot of like people get mad at me, it's not any religion. In fact, atheists are a problem, but let's just say Islam, Judaism, Christianity is in the discussion. Extremism is the problem because if you really, break down the true meaning of the Quran that's exaggerated and it's like kill every person, it's not a Muslim, yeah, then you're a fanatic. But you can do that in every single religion. Every religion, let's be honest, preaches superiority. Every single one. They some respect other religions more than the other, but I genuinely believe that no matter what religion you are, I'm like stating something so stupidly obvious. If you're a good person and you respect others, there's no problem. Like I have never once in my life cared that somebody's not Jewish. In fact, Their religion is the last thing I care about them. The only reason I'm excluding atheists from this conversation is I have an intrinsic problem with atheism that if you don't believe some power is greater than yourself and you can't believe in God because either you're too arrogant or I don't know, I think it's arrogance genuinely. If you don't think something's above you, you scare me as a person because you don't have anyone to report to. A lot of the times we can all understand this. A lot of things that we do or don't do is not because we're such a great person. It's because we have a fear of God. It's because we have a fear of consequence. And I feel that atheists don't have that fear. So they're not part of this conversation. But extremism at any regard, and this is politically too, that's the real issue. And the extremism in the Middle East, and I'm talking Saudi, not like Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, they're trying to become, I don't want to say more Western, because what Western is becoming is not good, but they're just becoming more rational. They're understanding religious diversity. They're understanding more dialogue and doing more business with people. Like you can buy real estate now in Saudi Arabia as of January. You couldn't do that the last however many years. And I feel like that's what more people need to strive to do. Not, I'm right, you're wrong. Let's say, hey, you know what? It doesn't really matter. Let's respect one another.
Have you had a chance to meet any of the members, not necessarily the Crown Prince, but any members of the royal family and had,
Mhm.
substantive conversations with them?
Yeah, I won't name names for his sake, but I met someone who is part of the Al Sauds, and he is an incredible person, and he'll probably watch this. He follows me. He he called me one day and he said, I understand why Israel just bombed Hezbollah. Justifiable. In fact, we thank you for that. We hate Hezbollah. But what the hell did Gaza do to Israel?
Yikes.
And I was just like, I know he's not being malicious because we're beyond that point. But does he really not know? So anyway, we get into like an hour-long FaceTime. I sent him the most graphic, horrific thing straight out of Hamas's Telegram group to his WhatsApp. He is white in the face, sick to his stomach. I'm surprised he hadn't seen that prior to our conversation. And in our conversation, I was like, he said something like, why does the IDF exist? And I said, to prevent another Holocaust. We have Israel. There's no more, fear of a Holocaust happening because we have a safe space, which is Israel. And he said, what's that word? And I'm like, what word? He's like,
Right.
hologram. I'm like, Holocaust. And
Right.
I promise God, he wasn't being rude.
Yeah.
He just genuinely, they don't have a Holocaust education, and I couldn't process the fact that he had never heard of it because something that was so not important to my life, but something that I carried with me like so deeply is something he hadn't even been aware existed. And when I told him what it was, you could see his whole mindset changed. So he was a member of the royal family. He was still very young, to his credit. Like he had a lot to learn. He just finished, I think, his military service. But these conversations, I think, is what moves the needle in a more positive direction. Like I had Saudi friends in the government telling me, I can't wait to go to Tel Aviv and I can't wait for them to come to Saudi. I wish more people could see what we're doing here and what they're doing there because I feel like I'm the vessel sometimes. And it really is something so beautiful that I wish the world could see.
Well,
And I'm talking, by the way, exclusively to Saudi. There's a lot of countries I would not say the same.
this is about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Do you know who Hamid Abdel Samad is? Do you know does that ring a bell? No.
No.
His dad, he's Egyptian, and his dad was a hardcore imam in Egypt. And then Hamid left Islam, moved to Germany, was pursuing a PhD, became an author, wrote several best-selling books in German, uh, criticizing Islam. And we became friends, and he came on my show a few times. I went on his show. His show is called in Arabic Sandu al-Islam, which means the box of Islam. So he had come to Montreal and said, "Hey, would you do a show with me in person?" And so I said, "Sure." And so I went to this hotel sort of area, and there must have been, I don't know, 20, 25 Muslim guys. It looked as if, like, if you just look at it by judging the book by its cover, you think they're about to, behead me because it looks like a collection of guys, straight out of ISIS to stereotype. Meanwhile, they're all super fans. We're hugging it out. We're taking selfies. And so, meeting people, sharing a drink with them, having a meal with them tends to demystify the other. I know it sounds like a cliche, but really it does amount to that. Now, I
It's
have wit
cliche, but no one's trying it. Maybe it's
exactly.
too cliche.
Well, exactly. And because Arabic is my mother tongue, I've experienced this on endless occasions in my life because suddenly to them, I'm not really Jewish because how
Mhm.
could a Jewish guy act the way that I do and speak in the way that I do? And suddenly I become like, wait a minute, there are sort of cool Jews around, like this guy. And so, yeah, that's the secret. All right, let's one or two more questions before I let you go. What are some, if I asked you, I maybe you don't do a 5-year plan, but if I asked you, what does the horizon look like for Emily Austin, other than finding the incredibly lucky future husband and having a million Jewish babies with him? What are some professional goals or personal goals that you have over the next? What should we expect from Emily?
I hope to have another year full of sports broadcasting while simultaneously pursuing the Emily Austin show. And what I want to come about from that is similar to what you have going here, which is like a space for open dialogue, but I don't want to limit it to politics or sports. I really want it to be a current events space. So my first episode was Cuomo. My second episode has no guest. My third one might have Ryan Garcia, the boxer, or Michael Porter Jr., the Brooklyn Nets player, to talk about. I know Ryan wants to talk about Christians being slaughtered in Nigeria, and Michael wants to talk about sports gambling. So I just want it to be a space that everyone has something to care about. And I hope that that really serves me long term. I'm strongly contemplating if I want to go into American politics, meaning like Congress or Senate.
Oh,
Given that I'm 24, I have time to think about it because I can't run right now, even if I wanted to. And that's going to depend on, honestly, it's going to depend on what the future of the Republican Party looks like. Because if we're going to trend towards the Marjorie Taylor Greens and Tucker Carlsons, that's not a space worth entering. It's not worth the pain and agony I'm going to go through. But if somehow we can get back to the middle, which is wishful thinking, because if we're not doing it under Trump, we're not doing it under anyone else, that's a place I definitely want to enter, political landscape.
wow. Well, best of luck. I recently had Representative Fine out of Florida on my show. Do you know who that is?
Of course, I met him when he was running.
Ah, okay, great. So yeah, so we had a great conversation. So best of luck there. And now you're born in the United States?
Mhm.
Oh, maybe one day the first Jewish woman president? Emily, is that
You see
possible?
that post on my Instagram?
No, I haven't. What is that? What is it?
This is going to be a bit of a scroll, but it's worth it. We're going to find this. I posted this
I can't
years ago.
I can't see this.
Oh,
Hold on.
I'm finding it anyway. Look how far back this is. Hang on. Wait, oops, that's not it. Huh. Read the caption.
Wait a minute. Wait. Uh, your first woman Jewish president. When was this? Look at that.
2022.
Well, from your lips to God's ear. Emily, such a pleasure having you. Stay on the line so we could say goodbye offline. Come back anytime. Best of luck on your new show. You're a
Thank
delight.
you.
Cheers. Take care.